I found a hidden camera inside my smoke detector while changing the battery. Professional installation. Wireless connection. Pointed directly at my bedroom door. At 67 years old, living alone on my farm outside Red Deer, why would anyone need to watch me sleep? To find the truth, I left that camera exactly where it was. I didn't tell anyone. I just started paying attention. 3 days later, my daughter asked me a question she couldn't have known to ask unless she'd been watching. That's when everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment below. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it there right now? I want to know how far this story travels across our country and beyond. The Saturday morning battery check was something my late wife Helen started 30 years ago. Every 6 months, like clockwork, change the smoke detector batteries, test the carbon monoxide alarms, check the fire extinguisher. She'd been gone 4 years now, but I kept the routine. It felt like keeping a small piece of her alive. I was standing on my stepladder in the upstairs hallway, unscrewing the smoke detector cover, when I noticed something wrong. The weight was off, too heavy for just a 9-volt battery and some wiring. I pulled the whole unit down and looked inside. There it was, a tiny black cylinder no bigger than my thumb, nestled beside the battery compartment. A lens, a camera lens, pointed through a small hole that had been drilled into the plastic housing. I stood there on that ladder for a full minute, not breathing. I'd been a forensic accountant for the Royal Bank for 38 years before I retired. I'd seen fraud in every shape imaginable. Embezzlement schemes, identity theft rings, insurance scams that would make your head spin. I knew what surveillance equipment looked like. This wasn't some cheap gadget from Canadian Tire. This was professional, expensive, the kind of thing that cost real money and required real knowledge to install. I climbed down carefully and sat at my kitchen table, the smoke detector in front of me like evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. Someone had been watching me. In my own home, the home Helen and I had built together in 1982. I made myself think logically. Who had access? Who had opportunity? My neighbor Bill Mackenzie had a key for emergencies. But Bill was 74 years old and thought the internet was a government conspiracy. He could barely operate his microwave. The furnace technician had come by in October for the annual inspection. But he'd been in my sight the entire time, never went upstairs. My grandson Tyler had visited during reading week in February, but Tyler was 20 years old and more interested in my tractor than my smoke detectors. And then there was my daughter, Sandra. She'd been coming by every Sunday for the past 3 months, ever since she moved back to Alberta from Vancouver. She said she wanted to help out around the house, said she worried about me living alone at my age. Sandra had been in every room of this house, multiple times. Alone, I sat back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. No, that was ridiculous. Sandra was my daughter, my only child. She wouldn't spy on her own father. But even as I thought it, another part of my brain was clicking through details like a calculator processing numbers. Sandra asking about my medications last week. Sandra wanting to know the name of my doctor. Sandra asking if I'd thought about what would happen to the farm when I was gone. I'd told her not to worry about it. Told her everything was taken care of in my will. She'd smiled and changed the subject. The accountant in me knew something didn't add up. The father in me didn't want to believe it. I made a decision then. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't rip out the camera. I would do what I'd done for almost 4 decades when something smelled wrong with a client's books. I would investigate, gather evidence, follow the money, find the truth. I put the smoke detector back exactly where it had been, camera and all. Let them watch. Let them think I hadn't noticed. And I started paying very close attention to everything my daughter did. The next Sunday, Sandra arrived at 11 with a casserole dish and her husband Greg in tow. Greg was an insurance adjuster from Edmonton. They'd been married 8 years. He'd always struck me as the quiet type, the kind of man who let his wife do the talking while he watched and calculated. That morning, I watched him differently. "Dad," Sandra said, kissing my cheek, "you look tired. Are you sleeping okay?" "Fine," I said. Just getting old. She laughed, but her eyes flicked up toward the ceiling, toward the hallway, toward the smoke detector. We should check your carbon monoxide detector, she said. Winter's ending, but you can never be too careful with that old furnace. I checked everything yesterday, I said. All good. Something crossed her face, just for a second. Surprise? Concern? It was gone before I could name it. Greg wandered off to use the bathroom while Sandra reheated the casserole. I watched her move around my kitchen like she owned it, opening drawers, checking expiry dates on my medications, looking through my mail on the counter. Dad, she said, holding up an envelope. This is from your bank. Did you see the new statements? I see them every month. She hesitated. Have you thought about setting up online banking? It would be so much easier. I could help you. I've been reading paper statements for 40 years. I think I'll manage. She smiled. Of course, just trying to help. Over lunch, Greg asked about the farm. 400 acres of prime Alberta farmland that had been in my family for 3 generations. Land that was worth considerably more now than when my grandfather first broke ground in 1927. The Hendersons next door just sold their quarter section, Greg said casually. Got almost $2 million for it. Good for them, I said. Have you thought about what you want to do with this place? I mean, eventually? I looked at him steadily. Eventually isn't here yet. He went quiet after that. When they left, Sandra hugged me for a long time. Too long. The kind of hug that felt rehearsed. I love you, Dad, she said. You know that, right? I know. After their car disappeared down the gravel road, I walked through every room of my house. I found 3 more cameras. One in the living room light fixture, one in the kitchen clock, one in my office, pointed directly at my desk where I kept my financial documents. My daughter had turned my home into a surveillance operation. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing a camera was watching me from the smoke detector. I made sure to look tired, confused, like an old man losing his grip on things. Inside, I was already planning my next move. The following Monday, I drove into Red Deer and visited the Alberta Provincial Library. I couldn't use my home computer. If Sandra was watching through cameras, she might have access to my devices too. I'd seen enough fraud cases to know how these things escalated. At the library, I logged into my bank account for the first time in months. I usually relied on paper statements, but something Sandra said had bothered me. The balance was wrong. Significantly wrong. I should have had over $400,000 in my savings account. I was looking at $263,000. Nearly $140,000 had vanished over the past 4 months. I clicked through the transaction history, my heart pounding. Wire transfer to Morrison Financial Services. Wire transfer to Morrison Financial Services. Wire transfer to Morrison Financial Services. The same company. Over and over. Amounts ranging from $15,000 to $30,000 at a time. I'd never heard of Morrison Financial Services. I'd certainly never authorized any transfers. I Googled the company. Nothing. No website. No registration. No business license on file with Service Alberta. A ghost company. The kind I used to find buried in fraud cases. Someone had been stealing from me. Someone with access to my banking information. I thought about the camera in my office, pointed at my desk. Pointed at the drawer where I kept my bank book and password list, because Helen had always insisted I write everything down in case I forgot. I closed the browser and sat there in the library, surrounded by retirees, reading newspapers, and teenagers doing homework. My hands were shaking. My daughter was stealing from me. My own daughter. But I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. The kind that would hold up in court. I drove to the RCMP detachment in Red Deer. I'd worked with several officers over the years during bank fraud investigations. Constable Murray Chen had been one of the good ones. Murray wasn't there anymore, transferred to Vancouver 2 years back. But I spoke with a sergeant named Williams. I told her what I'd found. The cameras, the unauthorized transfers, my suspicions about Sandra. She listened carefully, took notes, asked questions. Then she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Carruthers, I believe everything you're telling me, but I have to be honest. Without concrete evidence connecting your daughter to those transfers, there's not much we can do. It could be identity theft by a stranger. It could be a bank error. The cameras in your house are concerning, but technically, if your daughter has access to your home with your permission, I understood. I'd seen this from the other side. Banks couldn't press charges on hunches. Neither could police. What do you suggest? I asked. She gave me the name of a private investigator in Edmonton, a woman named Patricia Fong who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. Document everything, Sergeant Williams said. And Mr. Carruthers, be careful. If your daughter is doing what you think she's doing, she's not going to stop. These cases usually escalate. I thanked her and left. The word escalate stayed with me all the way home. I called Patricia Fong the next morning from a payphone outside the Petro-Canada station. We met that afternoon at a Tim Hortons in Lacombe, far enough from Red Deer that no one would recognize me. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of direct manner I appreciated. She'd been a forensic investigator with the Alberta Securities Commission for 15 years before going private. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she sipped her coffee and nodded. This matches a pattern I've seen before, she said. Adult children who feel entitled to their parents' assets. They start with surveillance to learn routines and access information. Then they begin the financial exploitation. The final step is usually establishing legal control. Legal control? Power of attorney, she said. Guardianship. Having you declared mentally incompetent. Once they have that, they can sell your property, drain your accounts, even decide where you live. All completely legal. My blood went cold. Sandra had asked about my doctor, asked if I was sleeping okay, asked if I felt confused sometimes. How do I stop it? First, we gather evidence. I can trace those wire transfers. Morrison Financial Services sounds like a shell company. If it is, there's a paper trail. There always is. Second, we need to determine who else is involved. Your son-in-law seems like a likely candidate, but there might be others. Third, we document everything about those cameras. Serial numbers, installation dates, transmission frequencies, all of it. And then we take it to the RCMP with a case they can actually prosecute. She paused. But Mr. Carruthers, I want to be clear about something. If your daughter really is behind this, confronting her could be dangerous. These situations can turn violent when the target realizes they've been caught. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? I thought about my farm, my home, the land my grandfather had cleared with his own hands. I'm not going anywhere, I said. This is my home. Patricia nodded slowly. Then we need to move fast. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia dug into the finances while I played the role of an oblivious old man. I shuffled when I walked, repeated myself during phone calls, asked Sandra the same questions twice in a row. She ate it up. Dad, have you been taking your medications? She asked one Sunday. Which medications? Your blood pressure pills. The ones in the blue bottle? I don't have blood pressure pills, Sandra. She smiled sadly, the way you'd smile at a confused child. Of course you do, Dad. I filled the prescription myself last month. She had never filled any prescription for me. But she wanted me to believe I was forgetting things, losing my mind. Maybe you're right, I said. I get confused sometimes. Her eyes lit up. It was the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen from my own child. That night, Patricia called with news. Morrison Financial Services, she said. Registered in British Columbia 6 months ago. The director of record is Gregory Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you? Gregory. Greg. My son-in-law's name was Greg Morrison. He didn't even bother to use a fake name, I said. They rarely do, Patricia replied. They don't think they'll get caught. I've also traced the wire transfers. The money went from Morrison Financial Services to an account in the Cayman Islands, then back to a numbered company in Alberta. That company recently made a bid on agricultural land. Let me guess. My agricultural land. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Not just a bid. They've already started the paperwork. I found a draft purchase agreement. They're buying your farm from you, or rather, from someone acting on your behalf with power of attorney. I don't have a power of attorney. You do now, she said. It was filed with the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench 3 weeks ago. Your daughter is listed as your attorney for property and personal care, effective immediately. I sat down heavily. That's not possible. I never signed anything. The signature on file matches samples from your bank documents. They must have traced it from something you signed. A birthday card, a check, anything. My mind raced. The birthday card I'd signed for Tyler. Sandra had watched me write it. She'd offered to mail it for me. What do I do? We go to the RCMP tomorrow. I have enough now to make a case for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. But there's something else you should know. What? I pulled phone records for your daughter and son-in-law. They've been in contact with someone at a private care facility in Edmonton. Multiple calls over the past month. I think they're planning to have you committed. Committed? It's part of the pattern. Once they have power of attorney, they can have you declared mentally unfit. A doctor signs off, you go into a care home, and they have complete control over everything you own. It's been done before, more often than you'd think. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my living room. The camera in the light fixture watched me silently. My own daughter was planning to steal my money, take my land, and lock me away in a care home, all while I smiled and ate her casseroles. I thought about Helen. What would she say? What would she do? She'd fight, I knew. Helen never backed down from anything in her life. Cancer took her, but she fought it every step of the way. She wouldn't want me to give up now. I looked up at the camera. Watch this, I said quietly. The next morning, Patricia and I met with Sergeant Williams and 2 investigators from the RCMP's Integrated Market Enforcement Team. I brought everything. Bank statements, camera photographs, the forged power of attorney. All of it. The investigators listened. They examined the evidence. They made calls. By 3 in the afternoon, they had enough for arrest warrants. We'd like to bring them in tomorrow, one of the investigators said. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? Your daughter made a phone call this morning to a doctor at the Misericordia Community Hospital in Edmonton. She scheduled an appointment for you on Thursday. A cognitive assessment. They're accelerating the timeline, Patricia said. The investigator nodded. If they get a doctor to sign off on diminished capacity, this gets a lot messier. They could claim they were acting in your best interest, muddy the waters, legally. What do you suggest? We arrest them tomorrow morning. Before the appointment. I nodded. Do it. They sent me home with instructions to act normal. Don't change your routine. Don't let on that anything is wrong. Tomorrow, we'll have officers at your farm by 8. I drove back to Red Deer as the sun set over the prairie. The fields were still brown from winter, but here and there I could see hints of green. Spring was coming. New growth. When I got home, Sandra's car was in the driveway. She was waiting in the kitchen. Dad, she said, her face arranged in concern. Where have you been? I've been calling all afternoon. I went for a drive. Felt like seeing the countryside. You can't just disappear like that. I was worried sick. I'm 67, not 97. I can go for a drive if I want. Her eyes narrowed. Just for a second. I saw something cold there. Something I'd never noticed before. Of course you can, she said, softening. I just worry. You've seemed so tired lately. Confused. I'm fine, Sandra. Are you, though? She stepped closer. Dad, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. There's a doctor in Edmonton I'd like you to see. Just a checkup, making sure everything's working the way it should. What kind of doctor? A specialist. Cognitive health. She reached out and took my hand. It's nothing to be scared of. Lots of people your age go through this. I just want to make sure you're being taken care of. I looked at her. My daughter. The baby Helen and I had brought home from the hospital in 1971. The little girl who used to ride on my shoulders through the wheat fields. The teenager who cried on my chest when her first boyfriend broke up with her. Where had that girl gone? When had she become this? Thursday, right? I said. In Edmonton? She blinked. How did you know about that? I smiled at her. The same empty smile she'd been giving me for months. You must have mentioned it. Right, she said slowly. Right, I must have. She left 20 minutes later. I watched her taillights disappear down the road. Then I walked through my house one more time. past the cameras that had recorded my every move, past the kitchen where my wife had baked bread every Sunday morning, past the office where someone had photographed my passwords and stolen my future. Tomorrow, it would be over. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't sleep. I sat in my chair by the window, watching the stars over my land, remembering everything. Helen's laugh, Tyler's first steps, the day we finished building this house, standing in the empty living room with sawdust in our hair, dreaming about the life we'd live here. At 7:45, I saw the RCMP vehicles coming up the road, 3 of them, moving fast, kicking up dust in the morning light. I walked outside to meet them. "Mr. Carruthers," Sergeant Williams said. "It's happening now." "What about Sandra? Where is she?" "Officers are at her house in Red Deer. We're making simultaneous arrests." I nodded. "Can I be there?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Better if you stay here. This is going to be difficult enough, without her seeing my face, without knowing I was the one who turned her in." I understood, but I needed to see it, needed to know it was real. I followed them anyway. Sandra's house was a nice bungalow in a new subdivision, the kind of place young professionals bought when they were starting out. 2 cars in the driveway, Greg's truck, Sandra's SUV. The officers approached the door. I stayed back, watching from the road. Sergeant Williams knocked. The door opened. I saw Greg's face, confused at first, then pale as he understood. Then I heard Sandra, screaming. Not words, just sound, raw and furious. 2 officers brought her out in handcuffs. Her hair was wild, her face twisted with rage. She looked nothing like my daughter. She looked like a stranger. Then she saw me. The screaming stopped. Her face went blank, empty. "Daddy," she said. Her voice was small, like a child's. I didn't say anything. Couldn't say anything. "Daddy, you don't understand. I was trying to help you. You're not well. You need help." Still I said nothing. Her face changed again, the mask dropping away. "You stupid old man," she spat. "Do you have any idea what you've done? That farm should have been mine years ago. You should have been in a home years ago. But you just keep hanging on, wasting it all on property taxes and tractor repairs while Greg and I struggle to make ends meet." I found my voice then. "I loved you, Sandra. Everything I built was for you and Tyler. All you had to do was wait, ask, talk to me." She laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Talk to you? You never listened. Mom was the only one who understood. When she died, you should have just—" She stopped herself. But I heard what she didn't say. When she died, I should have died too. Given her everything sooner. They put her in the cruiser. Greg went in the other one. Neither of them looked at me as they drove away. I stood in the street for a long time after they were gone. A neighbor came out and asked if everything was okay. I said yes. What else could I say? The investigation took months. Patricia Fong traced every dollar. The RCMP built a case so solid there was no room for negotiation. Sandra and Greg had stolen over $140,000. They'd forged my signature on a power of attorney. They'd created a shell company to buy my land for a fraction of its value. They'd installed surveillance cameras to gather information and evidence that I was mentally unfit. The doctor in Edmonton confirmed that someone had been feeding him false information about my condition, someone who claimed to be a concerned daughter. At trial, Sandra's lawyer tried to argue that she was acting out of genuine concern for my well-being, that she believed I was showing signs of dementia, that the financial transfers were misunderstandings, family money being moved around carelessly. The judge didn't buy it. Neither did the jury. Sandra received 4 years in a federal institution. Greg got 3. They both lost their professional licenses. Their house was seized to pay restitution. On the day of sentencing, Sandra asked to speak to me. The guard said it was my choice. I said no. Some people asked me later if I felt guilty, if I regretted turning in my own daughter, if I wished I'd handled it differently. The truth is, I miss the daughter I thought I had. The little girl who picked wildflowers in the back field. The teenager who made me burnt pancakes on Father's Day. The young woman who held my hand at Helen's funeral. But that person, and the person who installed cameras in my bedroom, forged my signature, and planned to lock me away in a care home. They're not the same. Maybe they never were. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. Tyler came to visit last month. He's 21 now, finishing his degree at the University of Calgary. He wanted to apologize for his mother. Said he had no idea what she was doing. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. The sins of the parents don't transfer to the children. We walked through the fields together. The wheat was coming up green and strong. It would be a good harvest this year. "Grandpa," he said, "what's going to happen to all this?" I told him the truth, that I'd changed my will, that the farm would go to him when I was gone, held in trust until he was 30, that I'd set up education funds for any children he might have someday. He cried, hugged me, thanked me. "That's not why I did it," I said. "I did it because it's right, because family is supposed to mean something, and because I trust you." He looked at me with Helen's eyes. "I won't let you down, Grandpa." I believe him. Looking back now, I realize how close I came to losing everything. Not just the money or the farm, but my freedom, my dignity, my identity. If I hadn't noticed that camera, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, if I'd just believed what Sandra wanted me to believe, that I was a confused old man who couldn't take care of himself, I'd be in a care home right now, drugged, docile, watching my land get sold to strangers while my daughter spent my money. It happens more than you think. Patricia told me she handles dozens of cases like mine every year. Most of them never get reported. The victims are too ashamed, too confused, or too scared to come forward. They die in care homes, wondering what happened to the families they thought loved them. If you're watching this and something feels wrong in your own family, trust that feeling. Document everything. Tell someone you trust. Contact the authorities. And remember that the people who hurt us most are often the ones we'd never suspect. The lesson I learned is this: love is not an excuse for exploitation. Blood is not a license to steal. And age does not make us helpless unless we allow it. I'm 68 now, still living on my farm, still changing the smoke detector batteries every 6 months, just like Helen taught me. The cameras are gone. The shell company is dissolved. My accounts are secure. And every morning, I walk through my fields and thank God for another day on this land that 3 generations of my family have worked. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some wounds don't heal. But I'm still here, still standing, still fighting. That has to count for something. Where are you watching this from? What time is it there? Have you ever discovered a betrayal you never saw coming? Share your story in the comments below. And if this shattered vengeance story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Because every week, we share true stories about love, loss, betrayal, and the strength it takes to survive when the people you trust the most become the ones who hurt you the deepest. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never let anyone make you believe you're less than you are.